As we begin today, I want you to take a look at a photo. Now, can anyone resonate? Does your life ever seem to look like this? Like you're trying to do too much, take on too much, or carry too much all at once? And while you'd love to drop a few of these things, they're important. And rather than dropping any of them, we actually take on more and more. But the truth is, just like this guy, we all need help. One of the primary reasons we wind up with our lives looking like this is because we have a hard time saying the word no. And that's what our talk today is all about, learning the power of no. No is a critical word for us to develop as part of our regular vocabulary. And the reason it's critical is because saying no creates space in our life for the most important things. Now let's think about that for just a moment, the most important things in life. Like, Facebook and Snapchat and jewelry and sales calls, Mini Coopers, a bigger house, the new D. Rose shoes. You know what I'm saying? Like the important things. Well, we know they're not, but it seems that the most important things in life actually get squeezed out by the things I just mentioned. But let's do a real inventory right now, right where you are. I want you to take a few seconds and think about 3 or 4 things in life that matter to you more than anything else. Can we do that? Take a few seconds, think about 3 or 4 things in life that matter to you more than anything else. Isn't it funny how Facebook and Mini Coopers don't seem to make the list, right? You see, when we take even just a few seconds to think about what matters most in life, it's always relationships that rise to the top. My family, my relationship with Jesus, my marriage, my legacy, etc. My guess is each one of us, if we had to rank our values in order of most important to least important, whatever it is that's on your list, relationships would be at the top, right? Because we know deep down that's what we value more than career achievements or endless games of Candy Crush. But the problem many of us run into is we often don't align what we do with what we say we value. Now, why is that? I think a lot of it's rooted in the fact that we have a hard time saying no. We don't want to let other people down. We like being busy and feeling needed. We think we can handle more. Or maybe we feel like we can't say no lest our boss or spouse or friends get upset with us. And sometimes we don't say no because we've forgotten what we value most. Saying no can be a very difficult thing. In fact, I think this obscure series of commercials from Egypt for Panda cheese captures this difficulty very well. Take a look at this.
فايز اعمل لك معايا سندوتش جبنه.
Just you know why you and I.
باندا ما يتقلهاش لا.
قلت لك موزاريلا باندا يا عبد العزيز.
الاوردر ما فيهوش جبنه.
Just you know why.
والله هو.
You and I.
باندا ما يتقلهاش لا.
ايه ده؟ ما تيجي نجيب باندا يا بابا؟
يا ابني ده يا ابني ما جبنا حاجات كتير.
Just you know why you and I will buy and
باندا ما يتقلهاش لا.
Now that's pretty funny, isn't it? Saying no is hard. But if we fail to make the word no a part of our regular vocabulary, we'll always be answering to the squeaky wheel, trying to carry too much. We'll get overwhelmed, and in our attempt to please everyone, we'll likely please no one. The word no may not seem like a positive, transformative word for your relationships, but I think we'll see it may just be one of the most important words we could ever say. We're in a brand new series today called Relatively Speaking, which is a series about words and phrases that can bring new life to our relationships and keeps our actions aligned with our values. In this series, we'll be looking at the book of Proverbs to discover what words can bring life to our relationships. Proverbs is full of wisdom and practical insights into daily life. Proverbs has several contributing writers, but the lion's share of Proverbs is credited to King Solomon, who some call the wisest person to ever live. So throughout this series, we will be looking at various passages in Proverbs to teach us how our words enrich our relationships and can be life-giving. So if you have a Bible or Bible app, I want you to turn with me to Proverbs 25. And then I want you to scan down to verse 28 and take a look at this for just a moment. Proverbs 25:28 says this, "Like a city whose walls are broken down is a person who lacks self-control." Now this is why I love the book of Proverbs so much, because what we're reading doesn't need to be argued or debated necessarily. We don't need to exegete, alliterate, translate, or discover what the original meaning of the word walls is to understand what the writer is saying, because what we're reading is simply revealing a truth about how life works. If you do not have discipline, your life will eventually crumble like a city whose walls are broken down. This verse paints a vivid picture of a city that is susceptible to any and all attacks. There is no boundary for what goes in or what goes out. And the word self-control or discipline carries the double meaning of both instruction and correction. Without self-control, we seek pleasure in all the wrong things, thinking they will fill us up, and at the same time, we fail to live as God designed us to live. Self-control leads to you to protect yourself and the ones you love from becoming a broken down, defenseless wreck of regret. This proverb is talking about how a lack of discipline can break down our lives. Ask any athlete, mathlete, musician, carpenter, mom, dad, teacher, mentor, Pulitzer Prize winner, director, producer, farmer, or business executive from a Fortune 500 company, and they will tell you that if you do not have discipline, you won't learn to say no to things like junk food, distractions, bad relationships, other opportunities, impulse purchases, or the latest and greatest. By learning to say no, you are actually building up protection like a city that is well protected. If you have no defense, no wall, no discipline, you have nothing to protect your values. If you cannot learn to say no, you will never be able to say yes and be fully present, fully alive, and fully engaged with what you've determined matters most to you. Now, one of the primary reasons many of us, I think, are frustrated with life is because of our inability to say no. If we haven't developed a discipline to say no, by default, we have developed a bad habit of saying yes to everything and anything. And eventually, we end up disappointing everyone because we can't handle everything all at once. And sometimes we have to learn to say no to good opportunities. Otherwise, like a city whose walls are broken down, our life will crumble out of control. Now, my wife, whom I love with all my heart, has an incredibly difficult time saying the word no. She's a people pleaser. She loves everyone. In fact, she loves me so much, she's allowing me to share this story with you. A few years ago, my wife was asked to sing at a friend's wedding. And because the couple is a friend of ours, she said yes. But then a few weeks later, another couple asked Allison to sing in their wedding. And because they, too, are friends of ours, she said yes. The only problem was the weddings were on the exact same day and at the exact same time. And you heard me say that correctly, by the way. And Allison knew this, but because she struggles to let people down, she said yes to both requests. On top of that, she never told them, even down to just minutes before the wedding. Her plan? Well, she sent her sister, an equally good vocalist and similar in appearance to her, to sing at one wedding while she sang at another. No problem, right? Her sister Shannon walked in, much to the surprise of the wedding party, to our friend's wedding, and without enough time to construct a new game plan, they allowed her to sing. The couple got married, and thankfully they're still married today. But a few days later, we received a knock on the door from the father of the bride. And without getting into detail, it was the Come to Jesus meeting of the century, which wound up being a learning experience for everyone. And one of the primary lessons learned is that saying no is essential for maintaining healthy relationships. I love how author Seth Godin talks about saying no. Take a look at this. He says, "No is essential. If you believe that you must keep your promises, over-deliver, and treat every commitment as though it's an opportunity for a transformation, the only way you can do this is to turn down most opportunities. No, I can't meet with you. No, I can't sell it to you at this price. No, I can't do this job justice. No, I can't come to your party. No, I can't help you. I'm sorry, but no, I can't. Not if I want to do the very things that people value my work for. No is the foundation that we can build our yes on." No is the foundation we can build our yes on. That's good, isn't it? Let me show you something else. It's 3 concentric circles I think can help us see how life plays out on a regular basis and what to do about it. In the center, we see our values. As we discussed earlier, this is what we believe matters most to us, and it's what we want our life to reflect on a day-to-day basis. Now, the next circle is the narrative. This is how we talk about our values, the language we use. So if relationships are a high value for us, we might say things like people before profit, or relationships before responsibilities, or kids before my career, or build a bridge to someone rather than build a case against them. Does that make sense? So this is a story we want to tell. So we create language to direct and support that story. But, okay, our behaviors, this third circle, is what we actually do. It's how we live out our values, and all too often our behaviors don't reflect our values and the narrative we're speaking. Our behaviors tell a different story. They say things like profit before people, or responsibilities before relationships, or career pursuits trump time with my kids. Build a case against someone rather than building a bridge to them. We say things at the altar of marriage like till death do us part, and in sickness and in health, but we don't say no to the busyness that often crowds date nights off our calendar, and we eventually find ourselves distant from one another. We value friendship, but we don't say no to the extra responsibilities at work and find that we have no time or energy left over to spend with our friends. Another example is we say we value family, but we don't say no to technology when we're together, and we become more attentive to texting or Facebook than we are to our own children or our parents. We say we value the relationships in our small group, but we don't say no to competing activities and end up missing more gatherings than we attend. Then we spend an exorbitant amount of time and energy trying to make up for lost time and lost relationships. We make phone calls and make plans, commit and recommit, but by then we've got so many things going, we can't keep up and keep everyone happy, so everything drops again. Instead of living from the center outward so our values drive our behaviors, we tend to live from the outside in, getting stuck in behaviors that don't reinforce our values. And ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the primary reasons we are stressed out, unsatisfied, and disappointed with our life. Because our behavior doesn't reflect our values or the story we want to tell about our lives. If we have no defense, no wall, no discipline. We have nothing to protect our values. Like a city whose walls are broken down, our life is out of control. So if our life is out of control, what can we do better to align our behavior with our values? Well, in a word, we need to learn to say no. And in order to do that, we've got to be more intentional with the way we live our days. You know, when we pick up the story of Jesus in the Gospels, we find him on every single page living intentionally. We read that Jesus came to seek and save the lost. We read that Jesus came to serve and not to be served, but to give his life as a ransom for many. We read in the scriptures that Jesus came to reveal God's love to us. In all of this, we see the primary value of Jesus' life was people. He came for us. He came to reveal God's love. The primary value of Jesus' life was and is a relationship with us. And then we see it page by page, story after story. We see him living out this value very intentionally. Jesus said no to the temptation of wealth and power. He said no to judging and condemning sinners. He said no to busyness, no to fame, and no to countless things that could have distracted him so he could say yes to the mission of helping people find their way back to God. Jesus said no in order to say yes to the most important things. He refused to be like a city whose walls are broken down. Now imagine if Jesus, like many of us, got distracted from what was most important to him. Imagine him playing Candy Crush rather than loving his enemies. Imagine Jesus spending more time on his fantasy football roster than with his disciples. Imagine Jesus catching up on all his DVR recordings from the past week and forgetting to feed the 5,000. Or working so hard to keep his yard meticulous, his house well kept, painted, redecorated, feng shui, and with enough curb appeal to keep the Joneses across the street totes jelly of him that he forgot all about bringing the hope and peace God sent him to bring. Now, I know that sounds a little ridiculous, but we often fail to live out the values we say are most important to us because of things like Facebook, fantasy football, and chasing the all-American dream. You see, Jesus was intentional, laser-focused, a man of discipline, a man on a mission whose behaviors aligned with his values and tell the story of his radical love for us. I want you to think for a minute what saying no could mean in your life and relationships. In his fantastic book, Boundaries, Henry Cloud says that some of the things that happen when we say no are things like we create boundaries, we maintain control. Saying no aligns values. It protects us and others. Saying no allows change. It creates steadiness in our life. And saying no creates something that looks so foreign to us we might not recognize it. Do you know what this is? It's a calendar with blank space. Have any of us ever seen such a thing? I mean, saying no creates blank space so we can begin to say yes to what matters most. Imagine a calendar having blank space that could be filled with people, with the relationships that mean the most to you. Imagine living your life from your values. Can you imagine for just a moment what life would look like if we weren't trying to do so much? Can you imagine how much more we could get done if we learned to say no to all the things that don't align with our values? Can you imagine how much more satisfied your life would be when you start living from the inside out rather than the outside in? Well, this week we want to challenge one another to live intentionally. Predetermine what your values are and live from the inside out. Yes, there are going to be distractions. Yes, there are going to be interruptions. Yes, there are going to be things that come out of nowhere and test your resolve. But if at the end of the day or the end of our lives, our relationships with our spouse or friends or family matter more than anything else, let's commit to living that value today. In fact, I want you to think of one relationship that you've been let slipping. One you highly value, one you'd love to tell a good story about in the future, but one that's currently getting edged out because you've said yes to too many other things. Commit today to saying no to the distractions and other opportunities so you can say yes to the relationship. People before profit. Family and friends come first. Relationships come before responsibilities. Let's all commit to telling a good story with the way we live our lives. Amen?